Κυρίες και κύριοι, κοντά μας έχουμε τον Paul Glastris. Είναι ένας άνθρωπος που γνωρίζει πολύ καλά την αμερικανική πολιτική, καθώς έχει υπηρετήσει σε πολύ κέρυες θέσεις. Μία εξ αυτών ήταν ως λογογράφος του πρώην Προέδρου Bill Clinton, αλλά είναι και ο αρχισυντάκτης της εφημερίδας Washington Monthly. Πάμε λοιπόν να τον καλησπερίσουμε και να δούμε τι ακριβώς περιμένουμε στις ενδιάμεσες εκλογές. Mr. Glastris, thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Okay, the interim elections to many may sound as indifferent, but it seems that they have a very special role to play in the years to come, especially in 2024, when we're going to have the presidential elections. And my question is, what exactly do you think the effect will be of a Republican victory, both in the U.S. economy and the U.S. Politics?
Well, domestically, quite considerable. Joe Biden's agenda so far has advanced because he has held both the Senate and the House in his party's hands. And through that, he's managed to get some big legislation passed on climate change, on infrastructure, and, funding for the war in Ukraine and many, many other things. It's been quite a substantial agenda that he's gotten through. Should the one or both houses become in the Republicans' hands, a lot of that will disappear. There will still be chances for bipartisan achievements, but much less so. Well, on the foreign policy side, it may be a different story, but we have to see.
Obviously, we're really interested in the Greek-American relations, bearing in mind that Bob Menendez is actually the chair of the Foreign Relations Committee. My question is, what do you think will actually change, provided that the Republicans take over both the Foreign Relations Committee? And we also had Chris Pappas, who has actually put forward an amendment in the Defense Act in order to block Mr. Biden's intention, if you like, to sell both the upgrade kits to Turkey as well as to sell some new F-16s.
So honestly, I don't think a whole lot will change. If Senator Menendez, who really is Greece's best friend in the Senate, is no longer running the Senate, the person in line on the Republican side, Senator Risch of Idaho, has been pretty tough on the Turks himself. To get the F-16s approved, which the Biden administration would like, it requires both the the ranking and the chair of both the House and the Senate Foreign Affairs committees. And so it's possible that it becomes more easier for Turkey to get those F-16s, but I'm not seeing it. And I think most observers of that here don't think a whole lot will change. We'll see, but there's a lot of stability in the Greek-U.S. relationship right now.
Even though that the majority may actually change hands.
Yes, there are great differences between the Trump administration and the Biden administration, for instance, less so on U.S.-Greek issues. Traditionally, the Republicans have been a little bit more pro-Turkey than the Democrats. But there's been a sea change in the view within the Republican Party, within the defense establishment, within the conservative intellectual world about Turkey. And so I think the Democrats and Republicans are a little closer on that than they used to be.
Now, we have more than 6 Greek Americans running for the Senate and the House this time. And the question is, what do you think we should expect, bearing in mind that these people are really important to the Greek diaspora and the Greek affairs as well?
Well, one of those is Congressman Charlie Crist, who will be leaving regardless because he's running for governor of Florida. A couple of the others, John Sarbanes, Gus Bilirakis, they're very, very safe. There's another Greek-American woman in New York who is in a competitive race, but looks pretty solid. And then there's Chris Pappas in New Hampshire and Dina Titus in Nevada, both are in tough races, and both are good competitors. But Chris Pappas's district has always been extremely competitive. No one really holds it for more than one or two terms. And Dina Titus in Nevada, her district has been redrawn. So they're going to win or lose based on the overall wave of voting. If the Democrats overperform, and there's some evidence of that, they could hang on. If, as is typical in these midterms, the opposition party, in this case the Republicans, do well, we could see their loss. And, you know, Democrats have already lost a friend in Carolyn Maloney of New York. But they may be picking up Robert Menendez Jr. In the House. So it's a mixed picture, but not really a strengthening one for Greek Americans. Now, outside of Congress, it's a different story. There's a Greek American running in Illinois for Secretary of State who's going to probably win, Alexei Giannoulias. And my friend Eleni Kounalakis is very likely to be reelected as
in California,
Lieutenant Governor of California, and her future is quite bright. You know, you can see her making a run for the governorship if that opens up, or the Senate. So
and she's really close to Kamala Harris, the vice president as well.
I'm sorry?
She's really close to Kamala Harris as well. She's the vice president.
Very close. Yes. Very, very close. So there's a lot of talent coming up.
Now, obviously, there is one single person that actually rings the bell, and I think this comes to an area, a region, which is very crucial to the Democrats. That's Pennsylvania. A friend of Tayyip Erdogan himself, who is very pro-Turkish. What do you think the effect of such an election will be?
Well, we don't know whether Mehmet Oz will win that election. He's running against the Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman, the Democrat. It's a very tight race. No one can tell you what's going to happen. You know, Fetterman has said the right things on Greek American issues, issues important to the Greek American community. Oz is, you know, was voting until recently in Turkish elections. And as you said, a friend of the Turkish government. So that's a very big deal. And we've really never had that element in our politics before. And it will, you know, it will be interesting.
Mr. Glastris, I want to pick your brains if you allow my wording. The thing is, we had Fethullah Gulen living in isolation, in exile in the US for the last 10, 15 years or so. My question is, do you think that there will be a change in Fethullah Gulen and the request of Turkey for his return back home, provided we have a different result with the Democrats or the Republicans?
That's a really good question, and I have no idea how to answer it. I can't imagine this President Biden, changing policy on that issue. He's the Democrats are a pretty strong human rights party, and religious rights party, and Republicans are a religious rights party. Nothing will change if Republicans take the House and or the Senate on that issue. And I can't see the Biden administration, which has many reasons to want to negotiate with Turkey. Sweden and Finland in NATO is just one of them. But I can't see that would be a chip, but I could be wrong.
Now, finally, before we sum this up, I just want to ask you your personal opinion. We have Joe Biden in this term running for president. Probably Donald Trump will announce his candidacy the next week or so. My question is, how close or how far do you think Donald Trump is from winning the presidential elections in 2024?
Well, I think Donald Trump can win the Republican primary if that's what he chooses to do, and if by then he's not indicted or convicted for a crime, and he's under an immense number of investigations. Could he beat Joe Biden? Sure. Joe Biden, is the sitting president. He's vulnerable in many ways. He's not a young man. No one can tell, but all of the polls show Biden beating Trump if the election were held today, and Biden already beat him once. Mm-hmm. So I don't believe Trump is necessarily the best candidate the Republicans can put up against Joe Biden should Biden decide to run. But I believe he's a candidate who will be there if he chooses to run.
Mr. Glastris, what do you think is the X factor right now which will determine the outcome of these elections? How do the people in the US vote, and what do they bear in mind when they go just to drop their the vote and the ballot?
Well, President Biden has been making a strong case that democracy is on the line, and I think that's right. Voters are all over the map in terms of the issues that they care about. Inflation is probably number one. Abortion is up there in the top three. But in terms of your viewers watching this election over the course of the next 12 hours, I think the X factor is early voting. Republicans used to be big on early voting, especially vote by mail. Donald Trump has scared them off of that. Democrats, on the other hand, have gone big into early voting. And even though a lot of the media and the polls are showing a very big Republican win, suggesting a very big Republican win, Democrats are breaking records in terms of early voting. Higher percentages of voters voting early among Democrats than in 2020 and 2018, both years that Democrats won. So it's a weird election, and no one really can predict the outcome here.
If you were to put your bets on, what exactly would you choose? Do you think that the Republicans will actually take the Congress, the majority of it, or will we have a situation as the one that we have right now?
I think the Republicans are going to take the House. Almost everyone thinks that's the case. There's a very, very narrow path wherein Democrats could hold the House. Until 3 weeks ago, it looked very good for the Democrats to hold the Senate. It looks less like that now. But again, there is data on both sides, and the polling isn't very accurate right now, and anything can happen.
Mr. Glastris, thank you very much for being with us today, and I'm sure that your views and your insight will probably bear some fruits. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.